Hello, and welcome back to the Irish Tennis Updates podcast. My name is Adam, your host. This week I am chatting to JoAnne Williamson. JoAnne has been involved in tennis for her whole life. She travelled to Nick Bollettieri's Academy in Florida when she was a teenager and represented Ireland at the Junior World Championships. More recently, JoAnne has played for Ireland at a senior, at a vets level, and done so very, very well. JoAnne also has been involved in coaching for a number of years and is currently based in Cork. She has a lot of passion for tennis and a lot of great stories. I really enjoyed talking to JoAnne and getting to hear the stories and getting to hear her thoughts on all things tennis. I hope you enjoy this episode. Here we go. Here is JoAnne Williamson. All right, JoAnne, a big thanks for coming on today. How are things with you?
Yeah, things are really good. I'm just home from a really lovely, beautiful, soft day down in Cork, and I've been lashed out of it for about the third week running. So we had a sunny day about 2 weeks ago, and I think that was our summer. So all's good though.
Now, I just want to start, JoAnne. I've seen recently, I guess over the lockdown, maybe more so than you had before, but you can tell me a little bit about that, of some of the writing that you've done and some articles that you've written. So I guess, would you tell me a little bit about, I guess, your kind of interest in that, and is that something you've done before? Is that something you kind of wanted to do? And then a little bit, I guess, on the topics you've kind of written about and how you came to kind of choose those topics.
Okay, so I got into it originally. I'd wanted to do journalism and public relations in college, and I was due to go over to the States to Utah on a scholarship many moons ago, but I fell into coaching a little bit by accident, and I put my scholarship on hold. And then I really kind of just didn't pursue it. Then once I found coaching, I just continued with that. But then recently, my husband actually writes for a newspaper down here, the Echo, the one that I've ended up doing the articles for, and he writes with cricket. But it kind of came about as a bit of a challenge, like everything does with him, which is a bit of a bet as to see whether I can actually do it and that kind of thing. And he said, if you're going to talk about writing and put up these posts on Facebook and blah, 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 why don't you actually look into doing something, write a blog or, approach the newspaper? And I kind of said, oh, yeah, no, I will. Eventually, he sort of said, you're never going to do it. So as soon as I heard that, immediately I was on to his editor and I said, look, I have a love of putting things on paper, and I'm just wondering whether you'd be interested. And thankfully, he was looking for female writers. So he came back to me immediately and said, yeah, listen, throw something down. And it was just on the back of Gráinne O'Neill had just done a piece with Women in Sport. So it was kind of really good timing. So she just done a really nice interview with highlighting some things that I'd done in the past on my own coaching kind of pathway and that. And I suppose that sort of did me a couple of favors. And he said, look, throw together, 900 words on a piece of paper and let's see what the story is. And shockingly, he published it. and then, like anything else in life, I think it just kind of spiraled from there. And so a bit like a dog with a bone, I've been kind of on to him saying, well, do you want this to be weekly? Do you want it to be just when something comes up in tennis? And there isn't a huge amount of tennis coverage anyway. So it's a really good avenue for us to kind of even get anything across in any way, shape or form, of whether it's coaching, whether it's tournament results. There used to be an awful lot when I was growing up, in the Irish Times, and it was really proud moment to see your name in there. Whether you won or lost now is a different story. But we think we've kind of lost that because of social media, and it's no shame on you now, Adam, like you're doing a brilliant job, but it does tend to, people stop seeing it on a page. And so he went with it, and I've been doing it ever since. So I don't know whether I'm running out of topics or I'm just going to have to start finding and digging a little bit deeper, but maybe when competition starts back up, that'll change, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I guess it's kind of an interesting thing, because you sort of mentioned that it is obviously a very limited coverage the tennis would get, and it seems mostly it's going to be like when there's a Grand Slam or something. It's not something that's a huge news anyway. Whereas it's great that you can kind of have these articles that aren't about huge tennis news; they're actually just about tennis in a very different way, which I guess is really nice to see. And a couple of the articles you've written, I guess, I think I saw one about enjoy tennis. So a couple of the ones that you've had, how did you kind of come to choose those, and how did you find the kind of writing the different ones?
Well, I think the first one that I did was a no-brainer, because we were so locked in, and we were being made promises that weren't kind of being kept, and nobody could really see an open tennis club for miles. So it was just more of an emotional plea more than anything. It wasn't directed at the government or directed, or there was nothing political supposed to come across from it. It was very much just an open plea of, please let us go back and play some tennis. It's not going to, we're not going to, stop following social distancing guidelines, etc., etc. So with that one, it was kind of easy. And then when the editor came back to me and said, I really liked it. And after I picked myself up off the floor for him saying that, then came the challenge. Was he actually asked me to write a piece on women in sport, which I thought, great. I've just had Grania doing that, and she's doing such an incredible job that I was kind of going, great, I can just pick through all the things that she's done and put them all together. But when I submitted my piece, he actually came back to me and said, no, I don't want just a tennis view. You're only giving me a tennis view. And I was kind of going, but that's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And he really kind of pushed me. He said, I'd prefer that you dug a little bit deeper and you looked maybe into other sports. And it was, let's put it like this, it was lucky that it was done over COVID, because there's no way under the sun that I could have done it, have done it if I was coaching at the same time, because it took so much time. And I really put everything into kind of like doing the research into women in sport. And I'd never heard of Rachel Blackmore. I should have been hung, drawn, and quartered. She's she's unbelievably famous now in horse racing. I'd never dug into it into any other sport, which is probably the wrong thing for anybody who's writing, and trying to put information out there about women in sport. And I didn't know my information, so I really dug deep and I got into it, got my teeth into it, and I was absolutely thrilled with the result, because it was something that so many people came back to me and said, geez, you really hit the nail on the head. And it wasn't a finger pointing at anybody to say that there wasn't any coverage of women in general. It was just, it could do better, and it wasn't a sexist piece or anything like that. It was just, and it was really enjoyable, although it broke my heart to do it, because it was so hard. I was really out of my comfort zone, a little bit like this, totally out of my comfort zone. But the inclusion, the sports inclusion and disability piece was just something that had to be done, because I've kind of, over COVID, I did a couple of courses about disability and inclusion, and the tennis with visually impaired. And I think the main thing was that I was so scared about it. It's a topic that I think an awful lot of us back away from, because we're not sure whether we're going to offend people, that we have a lack of knowledge, or that kind of thing is very difficult, I think, for coaches to admit that they're not good at something. And I felt that if I could give it a bit of a push, one, it might make me more familiar and more, more comfortable with the idea that I could give classes. And Liam O'Donoghue, who you spoke to, I mean, wow, you could just sit down and talk to him for, I'd say, a week. He's so much information. The stories he has are incredible. I mean, it's a drive from inside. It's incredible. And then, as well, there was a couple of times I talked to Alwyn O'Toole, and her stories are just so funny about how she got around really involving herself with players with disabilities. And the stories are incredible. And I love that. I just think that that's something that, I hadn't done before. So once I wrote the article, I realized that there was an avenue for coaches to, I suppose, expose themselves a little bit more towards things that they're not comfortable with. And we need more classes. It's as simple as that. There isn't enough disability sports and inclusion. There isn't enough classes for wheelchair tennis or VI tennis. And so I'm thrilled that I got it out there, and there was an unbelievable response. I got so many messages saying, listen, the article is great in itself, but we didn't know this and we didn't know that. And that's my job is done. If that's the case and the information has gone out there, well, then that's it. That's all. But now I get to do a VI tennis class, which I'm starting next week. So I'm terrified again, but really looking forward to it. And that's down in Ballinlough. So I am excited about that. And that's kind of come off the back of the article. So, good things are happening.
Yeah, no, great. And obviously, as you say, it's a great kind of area, and something that most definitely isn't done. There isn't enough done for it, and I think that's growing. I think there's more, and obviously, it's great to see they have the VI class starting. I think it is just a great area to, and as for coaches as well, just to be involved with, as well as there are other sessions to have some of these going on. I think is great for them. It's great for everyone, really.
Totally agree. So I think the more that we can shake off the fear, and there is a fear. I mean, I did an interview with a girl who's doing her thesis for Mary I, and she's doing it on players with autism in tennis. And when she spoke to me first, she said, like, would you be able to help? And I kind of went, I don't really think so. I don't have classes that are tailored towards people who are autistic. And as we talked, I discovered that we probably already run classes that have children who are on the spectrum, and how we deal with it is that it's inclusion. It's just bringing them into the same fold as everybody else, and maybe working with them in a different manner, etc., etc. And that was really kind of like a light bulb moment where I sort of went, well, if I'm not scared to do that, well, then why am I scared to do a class for somebody who has vision impairment? Is it because I'm putting a label on it? So that's kind of where I've gone with it now, is that my kind of like my put together, or my view is that, every player is a player, and whatever we can do to help them is the same for everybody, just slightly different.
Yeah. That's really good. And I just want to move on a bit, and I guess to touch on to your own tennis journey a little bit. So I guess, where did tennis start? How were those junior days for you?
Right, gosh, you're going very far back into the history books now, but I grew up in Dublin, which I hope you can tell from the accent. It's not completely Cork yet, I think. But I grew up just down the road from Ellen Park, where Rob Cherry's head coach there now, doing a fab job. And I was up swinging a golf club up in Ellen Park while my mum was, I was going caddying or something like that. And Helen Lennon, who was an ex-Fed Cup player and ex-Fed Cup captain in Ireland, was the head coach there. Superb player, an amazing coach. And she saw me swinging the golf club. And with that, she went up to my mum and said, look, if you don't make a golfer out of her, could I give her a couple of free lessons? That was kind of the start of it. And she took me on then on a coaching basis. And I lived within 10-minute walk of the place. I was about 9 or 10. And I remember the first year of playing like tournaments, and my dad used to come to watch, and I don't think I won a match. I think I literally walked off the court every match after a 6-love, and if I got a game, there was a celebration at home type of thing. But he really not pushed me, but he persevered with saying that I could do something with this. And the following year he passed away. And I don't know what happened, but something came together, and I started winning matches. And there was a fabulous event in Leinster, which was called the Barneville Babes, and it was brilliant. It was open to anybody under the age of 12, and then the semi-finalists and the finalists were put into a squad, and they were given subsidized coaching depending on how far you got through the tournament. Kind of like Leinster squads, but this was done on the basis of the results of the tournament. So the first year I played in it, I was knocked out in the first round, and then the second year I played in it, I won it. And that was the ball rolling. And then by the time that the following year came around to Fitz, I got to the final, and it was an incredible occasion. It was brilliant. I lost, which was, that was just part and parcel of the, being able to say that I got to a final in Fitz was one thing. But from then on, it was just, Leinster were very proactive with their squads, and, we trained once or twice a week, and you had your groups and your private coaching, and I never stopped then. Then it was interpros, and then it was, traveling away to tournaments over to England, and that then it you kind of draw to where does it stop. So it didn't. It just kind of kept on going. I ended up then in the south of France, I was about maybe 15 or so. And I was in a training camp down there in the very south of France with a fellow called Pierre Barthez. And he would be like a national hero in France. And I'm not too sure how my mum came across him, but when I went over, I used to stay with this gentleman who was a South African tennis coach. Himself and his wife ran the academy, and I moved in with them basically, and they had one son who was in the States on a tennis scholarship. So I moved in with them and basically became their daughter, which was just brilliant and fierce handy to live with the two head coaches in an academy. And like, we're talking 30, 40 tennis courts. And I ended up going to Bollettieri's in, it would have been the beginning of fifth year for me. I'm not too sure why my mum kind of chose that time, but clearly the educational part wasn't hugely important. But fifth year, from September through to Christmas, I went to Bollettieri's, and it was an amazing experience. Unfortunately, I fractured my toe about 6 weeks into it on a running machine. And that's why I claim I don't go on running machines anymore, is that like there's just damage to be done there. But because of the injury, I stopped training then for about 4 weeks. And then I just kind of said, look, I may as well, I'm here anyway. And I had been down, I got into the main draw of the Orange Bowl. So, you don't turn that down very often. So my mum just said, look, it's actually cheaper to leave you there, and you can stay and play when you can play, and then play the tournament rather than fly you home. Yeah. So that's what we went with. And Scott Barron had come over at that stage as well, and Scott's an incredible player. I'm sure you know him well. So we with Bollettieri's, it's a very intense setup. I mean, my schooling was down to, I didn't actually attend school, so I was supposed to do homeschooling myself. But that really didn't work so well, particularly for the fact that I left half my books at home. So we used to, you'd be talking doing 8-9 hours tennis a day, in gorgeous sunshine and everything else. But when you break your foot or your toe, it's kind of puts a bit of a dampener on things. So unfortunately, I just ate all around me for a couple of weeks. And when you're talking about American breakfasts, it's pancakes to boot everywhere, and everything is there was very little control on any dietary things. So I went hell for leather into it, and I'd say I put on about a stone. Even at the age of 15, I got very heavy, very unfit. And look, I played the Orange Bowl, and it was an incredible experience, and I wouldn't change it. I possibly wouldn't have gone on the running machine if I'd seen that coming. But it kind of shaped an awful lot of the ideas that I have myself about coaching. Like Nick Bollettieri is a genius. He's an absolute genius. But his method of coaching for me, it didn't work. Whatever it was, that he couldn't teach me how to hit a topspin forehand. He just couldn't. He actually gave up on me. He just went, you're Irish, you play on different courts, you don't need it, and it was that kind of stuck in my head. Whereas the Francis Rostone was way better with explaining how to do it. So I think I kind of learned my coaching methods from going through more detail than just this is how you do it and it's one size fits all. So yeah, so that's kind of the bones of the story.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of Bollettieri's, when you went over there, obviously you mentioned bits about how that experience was. How did that compare to what you would have expected going over? What kind of were you like? What kind of frame of mind were you in when you went over there?
No frame of mind. I mean, so the way I saw it was I was escaping from my mother for 4 months, and that was a bonus. Tennis was pretty intense in my house. It was kind of like my dad sort of wanted me to do this, and so because of that, the pressure was on me to achieve it. And then when I did achieve it, it was, well, now you have to maintain it, which is a big ask of any kid, to be honest with you. And tennis parents, as I'm sure you know, are pretty intense creatures. And yeah, my mum was brilliant, but she was trying to do the job of a mum and a dad. And me going off to Bollettieri's for 4 months at 15 years of age is actually I was at my last year under 16, so I was 16. I was pretty wild as well. So it was a brave move by her letting me out on my own. But the structure and the discipline of it completely suited me. I love discipline. I love routine. I thrive off it. So, getting up in the morning and going for a run and doing your training before breakfast, and then having your breakfast and then going back to the court and doing 2.5 hours of on court training, having your break, going back out and doing another 2 hours. To me, it suited me. And it's incredible. I made some very good friends who, one or two of whom I'm still friends with, which is great, and got up to lots of mischief. Even though you're supposed to be very disciplined, there was lots of stuff. We were walking into breakfast, and there's Jim Courier and Andre Agassi sitting at tables, and you're, sitting beside them without, care in the world type of thing. So that kind of stuff, when you can sort of say that you've sat at a table, not being bothered, kind of getting all flustered, and for the fact that these guys are players who are not only up and coming, but players who were in the top maybe 20 in the world at the time. So it's I like that side of it. It's fat.
Yeah. And do you have any stories of kind of meeting those players or spending time with some of those big names?
I have a story. I have a story.
But that was just my way of asking you for the story.
It's it's a funny one. It's probably a pure sign of me being cheeky, which is probably what most people will tell you, that at 16 years of age, that's what I was like. But I didn't really know top tennis players. So this guy sitting beside me with, cut off jeans and long hair is just some dude sitting beside me in a cafeteria. I don't know who he is. So in the process of booking courts over there, for the hundreds of courts that they had a rake of courts up the back of it, and they had a curtain that kind of came around the courts. And a group of us always liked to go up, and when we were given our time that we were to go and practice on our own, we'd always go up there because nobody could see you, so you could just kind of like do what you wanted, really. And so this one day in particular, there's like 100 courts, and we put our name down to book onto that court. We'll say it's court 20. So we booked onto court 20, and that was fine. And we go up, and the curtains are pulled around the court. So I was like, well, we booked the court, so whoever's in there is just, get off. Yeah. And they were like, no, we go, look, there's, 90 other courts that are free. You can go anywhere. So I was, no, on principle, we should follow the rules and take our court. So I think the rest of them knew, that there was somebody in there that obviously didn't want to be seen training. And so I just walked straight onto the court, and, this guy is there with his cut off jeans and his long hair, and there's, 2 or 3 coaches and a hitter. And I'm like, well, hi, we've booked this court. And this guy kind of walks up to me and goes, well, I think you should leave, kind of get off. And I said, well, we've booked the court. And with that, Nick Bollettieri comes around the corner, and he's like, Irish girl, go home, and I'm like going, oh my God, what have I done? So it turns out it was Andre Agassi that I was trying to remove from the tennis court. And I got a week's work in the kitchen for trying to boot him off a tennis court. So yeah, a memorable occasion, and interesting. I learned a few manners off that one. Yeah, definitely.
See where you're coming from. You had the court booked. He didn't have the court booked, but
yeah,
there you go.
See?
There you go. And
unfortunately, they didn't see it like that.
Didn't see it, yes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And so I guess in terms of the setup at Bollettieri, well, what do you think is the thing that makes it so successful, I guess, over the years? Do you think it comes down to kind of the environment, I guess, that they have, and sort of the routines that you mentioned, and how the days are structured and stuff like that? Or do you think it's more so maybe the level of the actual on-court coaching, the kind of quality of that? Well, where do you think the biggest strengths of that setup lie?
I think when you have an academy the size of what it is, and the financial backing of what they have, it's only going to work when you get people who buy into it. I mean, there's no doubt in the world that Nick Bollettieri is an incredible coach. When you look at the pool of players that he's helped to get to the top, it's outstanding. The results are incredible. He also has the benefit of having a lovely sunshine coming down on the majority of the year, which is obviously pretty good too. But like I said, it's not just the top players that go there, and there's quite a few Irish players who've been there. Like I said, Scott Barron was over there. Mick Nugent has been. I'm not too sure who else, but there is a draw by the name in itself, to go to the Bollettieri Academy. But the girls that I was sharing the room with, out of the six of us, there's, I'd say, one who still plays tennis. The others didn't. They weren't there to play on the top tier. They were there to take a year out from, an awful lot of them are French, Spanish, Italian. There's a huge base of that. And then they obviously run a really successful kind of after school program where kids from local clubs and houses and blah blah blah, they all come. So it's not just like an academy where you go and you sleep and you eat and you drink tennis and that's it. There's kind of like a club atmosphere to it as well. But if your name is Nick Bollettieri, it's only going to ever work. But he's whatever way he's come up with how to do things, it's a success story in itself. The coaches that he has are, there's a lot of Spanish coaches, not so many homegrown American ones. They're more Spanish and Italian, and maybe that's why it works. There's a different element of the coaching. And look, every coach is different, so you couldn't say that his academy works because the coaches are incredible. Obviously, the players go there because there's brilliant coaching, but there has to be something else. There must be the physical side of it. We did the program included sports psychology with Jim Lair, yeah. And I'm so regretful of the fact that I wasn't mature enough to understand what the sports psychology was about. When he was giving his sessions and we were sitting, on the floor or lying on the floor and he's asking us to visualize, hitting our shots and stuff. The way my shots looked in my mind are certainly not the ones that came out on the tennis court. And I just wish I had been able to embrace that a little bit more if I'd been older. I think it would have worked a lot better. I think you have to be taught how to take sports psychology on rather than just, throw you into it and see what happens.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting one. And a lot of different parts going on. Obviously, it's, such a big academy, as you say, a lot of parts to the machine kind of that all work together. And just to move on a little bit, and I know around that time you also, you would have represented Ireland at the Junior World Championships.
Yeah, badly.
So
very badly.
Yes, you can tell me a little bit about that experience, how it went, and where that was firstly.
Well, the Worlds was in the Orange Bowl is in Florida, so it's not far from Bollettieri itself, and I was determined to play in it on the basis that I'd come all this way, train for 4 months, and essentially I'm going to go out and play with an injury. But I just think you embrace the opportunity and take the chance. And I went out. I played like the number one in Trinidad. And you kind of think as a comparison, this is great because player from Ireland, player from Trinidad, and they're both playing on clay courts in the middle of Florida. This could be a decent matchup. But they had this newsletter which they put out every day with all the names of the players and the matches, and then ones that they'd highlight. And unfortunately, they chose my match to highlight and said, this little Irish girl coming over with her pale skin, and let's see how she fares. And just the pressure. The pressure was huge, and I wasn't used to that. If you go and play in the Irish clothes and you go and play in Fitzwilliam, there's a certain level of competition that you get used to, and you get used to, moms and dads standing around watching. And we're talking about going to a court where there's, 50, 60 people on, sitting at the side of each court watching. And that's intense. That is intense, no matter what way you cut it. But I lost anyway. I was on court for about 3.5, 4 hours. It was the longest match ever. And if anybody who knows me knows that I can't keep the ball in like 4 times in a row. So it was a very, very long drawn out match. And I lost in the third, which was, look, that's the way it goes. And, take it on the chin. And there was no excuse of I had an injury and blah, blah, blah. I was unfit. I was too unfit to play on clay. I probably would have been better off if I'd been playing on a different surface. Yeah. And we did okay in the doubles. I played with a girl from Switzerland in the doubles, and we got through a round or two. And I think at that stage I knew that it was doubles that I preferred to singles, but I think that's because I won, you know. But the level of the players that were there, you know, Yami, I think it's her surname. She was in the top 20 in the world, you know. She was playing there. Magdalena Maleva, those guys, Wayne Ferreira, like I said to you, like those guys were all playing, you know, under 18 and under 16, you know, and like those are some big names coming out of, you know, the following year when they move into senior tour. So, you know, being able to say that I even like, you know, sat around and you know, on a court beside those guys is kind of good enough for me at this point. I'm okay with that. And I had a good, I had a good, I suppose, a good run with junior tennis. And I think one of my biggest compliments was that we had a link to Wayne Ferreira, because the guy that I used to go to in France into his tennis academy in Cap d'Agde, his son Lindsay, like I said, was over in the States at a scholarship in Utah, and his best friend just happened to be Wayne Ferreira's brother Bradley. So there was this connection already, and Wayne had been told that I was playing and that he was to seek me out. So he came over and watched a bit of my match, and then at the end of it, we sat down and we had a chat, and we ended up being, you know, mates. And he was also dating my doubles partner, again, something that was very handy to have. But I think the biggest compliment for me was that after he watched myself and my partner playing doubles, he sort of said, is there any, if you do go and play pro tour, which was completely out of my league, and I wouldn't have, you know, put myself out there to do that, not hope. But he said, you know, if you do, let's go play some mixed. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay. And I, you know, it really didn't register as to who was saying this. And a couple of years later, I sort of regretted the whole not following it up and seeing, yes, if I could go do this. But, you know, look, again, it's a nice story to be able to tell somebody at some stage that Wayne Ferreira suggested that we played mixed doubles. Did it ever happen? No, but it could have. So.
Yeah, oh, very good. And to move you on a little bit, JoAnne, I guess is still representing Ireland, but I guess now more recently at a kind of a vet level. So how does that compare to the junior, and how have those experiences have been representing Ireland at that level?
So, you know, the vets tennis is incredible. You know, I have the utmost respect for players who are playing for Ireland and players who are playing, you know, GB is awesome as well. And people kind of think once you hit 35 that you're past it and that your best tennis has been played. And I actually think I'm playing better tennis now. Well, not right at this moment, but, you know, over the last 5 years, I think vets tennis in comparison to seniors and juniors it's a challenge. You got to learn how to not just rely on your strengths. You have to, you know, mix it up an awful lot more. There's more thought process goes into it. Now, I don't play singles anymore at all, which I've sworn for the last, I'd say, 10 years that I will change, but it's you know, it's not happening. And again, I think that there's a big element of that. I think I fear singles at this point. I can't remember how to play it. So I love doubles. I absolutely love doubles. I love the camaraderie. I love the competitiveness. Everything about it to me is, you know, exciting. I have some great doubles partners as well, which also really helps. But the vets tour, an awful lot of people kind of give it a hard time and say, you know, you're going off just on a week's holiday. And I did a blog the last time that we were in Florida when we were playing in the Orange Bowl. And it was unbelievable, because I actually didn't cop on to where we were at all until my mom said it to me. She said, you sent me a picture there of you standing in such and such a place. She said, I have the exact same picture of you when you were 16. Yeah. And I was like, no, you don't. And she sent it to me, and I kind of went, oh my God, I never put two and two together. But so I was back in playing and actually doing a lot better than I did when I was 16. But the standard is unbelievable. I mean, we played the number one in the over 40s age group in doubles in the world, and like we did okay against them, and we took them to a third set. You know, that was what, 3 years ago, and we can compete at that level. There, we definitely can. I mean, you look at the men's Potter Cup team. as
Yeah.
well.
Oh,
You know, I
yeah.
mean, if they, and those, you know, I know a lot of the guys that they were playing against. You know, the guys on the French team are the guys who go to the Worlds.
Yeah.
So, you know, so there is a level there that Ireland can definitely compete at. And Leslie O'Halloran was part of the team that won the Worlds in the 40s a couple of years ago. So, you know, the standard is really high. I think what we lack as players is we don't have the clay courts to practice on an awful lot. Now I know that's changing. It is changing. NACE have been a, you know, an unbelievable force in showing how, you know, how they can put in the clay courts and have everybody buy into it and train on it. And I mean, they're such a proactive club anyway, that I think they started the ball rolling with it, and now we've none in Munster yet. I think it might be a far way off. We need indoors a little bit more than we need clay, but I think if we could get more clay, the players that are coming up in vets, we've got some seriously good players coming up in 35s, and I think that we can compete. I really do. I think that there's a huge opportunity in the next couple of years if the players can go train a lot more on clay. So,
Yeah.
but you know, as tournaments go, the tournaments are the Worlds are an amazing event. They really are. They're amazing. I made some really really good friends as well, and some great connections with players both in, you know, GB, Spain, Italy, South Africa. You know, all there. It's great. It's fabulous to be able to actually, you know, pick up the phone even and text those guys about what they're doing coaching wise, and you know, gets an insight into what their country is doing.
Yeah, yeah, no, really good. And I guess when you look at vets, which is 35 plus, and I mean, you know, that's you can't really look at 35 as in tennis terms old in any way whatsoever. I mean, you look at like the top 10, I don't know, like probably, you know, in men and women, there's quite a lot that are, you know, up to, you know, above 35. So you can't really, you know, it's, you know, it makes sense. There's still a great level in that at all. Yeah.
I don't think when I was 16, I don't think I ever thought I'd still be playing tennis at my age, of which we're not going to let anybody know. But I started playing with the IC, you know, the Gina Nylands, the president there this year. And I only started that maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And that again, that's an incredible opportunity for players, because it's, I mean, you're only getting the top players in the countries, and we've had some amazing fixtures. You know, I've traveled a good bit. I've gone to England a good couple of times, and you know, I've played on teams. James Kluski rang me up and was like, "I'm captaining a team. Will you come to England?" So I was like, "I'm sorry. Do you have the right person?" You know, like I don't care. You put me on a court with anybody, that's great. But to be able to say that, you know, I got asked to play in a team with Jane Fennelly and James Kluski. I mean, these guys are serious players. I don't know whether they brought me for the entertainment or as a mascot or something, but you know, we played some great tennis, and with a fabulous venue just not far from Wimbledon itself. And you know, they're brilliant fixtures, and so much work goes in behind the scenes into them. That yes, they do. There is a lovely social element to them, but when you get on the court, those players have played Worlds. They've played, probably a lot of them have played Pro Tour. So what you're getting is players with huge amounts of experience, and look, there's no MasterCard can pay for that. Like, that's, to play against any of them is an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to move a little bit, I guess, from representing Ireland to representing kind of Interpro, representing provinces. So I guess obviously you grew up in Leinster, in Dublin, as you mentioned, and you now live in Cork and in Munster. So I guess, how did that move happen, and how did you come to then be representing Munster in these Interpro events?
With a lot of tongue in cheek and people passing smart comments about it. I obviously I played like Leinster Interpros all the way, you know, and actually I didn't play my last year under 18s, but with I kind of gave up tennis then and took up the coaching, and sort of, I didn't play any tournaments. That all went to the wayside, and I really got stuck into coaching. So by the time I met my husband, he's a Cork man, and we moved to Cork, it would have been maybe 2000, and I moved down here, and I got back into the coaching down here, which was brilliant. But I was playing in a tournament. A friend of mine decided it'd be funny to enter me into a tournament in a local club down here, and then tell me about it afterwards. So he did that, and I played the tournament and I won the tournament. And tennis is a small world, so word travels, and thankfully they actually got a job out of it, because they asked me to be their head coach then, which was fabulous. And but it kind of put me a little bit on the radar for playing tournaments. And then I kind of thought, why not? There's no pressure on me. Let's go, play it. But one of the guys who I worked in the club with, in this club, Douglas, I love Leinster rugby. I mean, I've always followed Leinster rugby. So Munster rugby were winning everything at the time. So this guy thought it would be funny to give me a gift of a Christmas present of a Munster rugby jersey. And, it's a nice jersey. So I said, hey, okay, that's fine. I threw it on and I was wearing it. And my husband turned around to me and said, you can't wear that. And I was like, it's a jersey and I got it as a gift, and he said, no. You can't wear that unless you play for Munster. And I went, yeah, whatever. And he kept pushing the point. And like I said, never say never to me. So he was like, well, you'll never play for Munster. And I went, right, that's fine. So the letter went off the following day as to how do I process not playing for one province and playing for another. So obviously I hadn't played any tournaments or any tennis for Leinster, over whatever it was, 8 years or so. So yeah, so I kind of announced, declared for Munster. And I missed that year because I'd missed the deadline for this, for declaring yourself. So I'd missed that. But the following year, I kind of got my act together and I was on their radar, and I had played a good couple of tournaments, and Elsa Ryan was playing a lot at the time as well. And another lady, Yvonne Flynn, and Karen Nugent and Yvonne Doyle were still playing a bit, a good bit as well. And so they were kind of coming down and playing tournaments. And so if I was in the tournament and I was playing, it kind of highlights when there's really good players in it, that if you even play against me, you get a couple of games, that's a huge positive. So I got to the final of a tournament Sunday as well down here, and I played Elsa, and a lovely match. I mean, she was way in a totally different league, but it was a really nice match, and it got me onto the Interpro team. And that was my first year of selection, was like 2002. And then I just played the whole time. And I think I was missing for a year. I had a pulled stomach muscle, and I'm missing for a year then for being pregnant, and one for the following year for recovering. And and then I played all the way up, and then just continued on to play vets at the same time as seniors for a couple of years. And I tried to retire a few times, and there was an opening for a doubles player, and I had some results, so I got the call up. But Interpros is incredible. I mean, it's one of the best events in the country ever. I couldn't say enough about it. Like, the buzz is completely different. And I grew up on a Leinster team of particularly strong players. We had even like the men's side had like Stuart Doyle and Scott Barron, and just so strong. The girls, Lisa O'Shea, and it was just so strong that we always won. And coming then and playing with Munster, there was this really good feeling of team, and a striving team. Like, not that there wasn't with Leinster, but it was a different feeling. It was like totally always being the underdog, and when you got one win, it was like you'd won the whole thing, and that I hadn't been used to that feeling. And it's fab, because it makes you work harder. There's nothing I wouldn't have done for members of that senior Interpro team for a long time. We strived so hard to get a win, and I think we were about 8 years with pretty much the bones of most of us being on the team a lot of the time, and then one or two kind of like swapping in and out and that kind of thing. And eventually we did get the win up in Dundalk. And I know to this day that if you asked any member of that team, what's their most favorite result, that you'll get that Interpro win out of their career in tennis. And to be able to say that about a little, a tiny little tournament in Ireland is huge. But I'll never forget the feeling of getting that last point. I didn't win it. I didn't get the last point, but the lads, Rob Leahy and Paul Fitzgerald, winning that match, there's just no other feeling. It was incredible. It's just literally highlight of my career, I'd say. And then, the vets Interpros, there's a lot of really good players. Munster have only won it twice, I think, in the last good load of years. But again, there's some really good strong players coming up on in the younger age groups. So maybe it's Munster's time again.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I have very little experience of any interpro stuff, obviously, compared to the stories that you've been telling and the stories a lot of people have. But like from the little experience that I do have, it was an incredible event, and it's something that I hope to get to be involved with in some way over the years, and get to experience kind of the atmosphere you're talking about. It just sounds brilliant, and it is just a great thing.
I think it's like the closest thing that us here will get to college tennis, because it's just winter league and summer league and everything else. I play summer league and winter league up in Temple Oak, and it's great. It's a team event, and I love that. But interpros is a whole different level. I mean, the intensity and we're all friends afterwards, but you talk to somebody on an Ulster team when you're playing against them that day, that's not cool. It's cutthroat. And Munster have always been known for being the loudest in support, and I think that just comes from I think it comes from an awful lot of shouting and years of perseverance, but I think it comes from passion and wanting to drive it on. And there's just honestly, if I could recommend to anybody to play interpros, that is play all the age groups. Don't just get one, get all of them. Play on the team, stay with the team. It's fabulous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, JoAnne, I just want to ask a couple more questions. And in terms of coaching, I know we've talked a lot about kind of playing and various kind of areas of that. But in terms of you, I know you moved into coaching obviously quite young. So just tell me a little bit about how you fell into love with coaching and how that's kind of moved on over the years since then.
So I got into coaching when I was about 16, and they gave all the Leinster squad free membership in David Lloyd, Riverview. And as kind of like a little bit of a trade-off, we used to help with junior groups and that kind of thing. And I didn't really think it was any career choice for me or path for me at all. But a couple of years later, the coach who was coaching me at the time was a fellow called Jimmy McDonough, a very well-known Irish coach. And I'd done my work experience up in Leopardstown in Westwood, and he was the head coach up there. And I was going to him for individual sessions, and he injured himself, and he couldn't work his Leinster squats. Now he met my mum, and he said, "Is there any chance?" I was about 18, and I had come back from the States, and I kind of packed up tennis, with the intentions that I would just sort of float off to the States and that'd be it. But he asked me to fill in and help him, just to feed balls, and that he'd give the instruction if I'd hit and feed, and that there'd be a bit of pocket money or a couple of free sessions with him. And so I did that, and that was literally it. I shut the door on going to the States. They called and they said, what, we just bump you off until maybe the fall term, and you can come over there and see how your bits of coaching go instead. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And then they rang, next time and said, okay, look, passport's ready and visa's ready, and what's the story? When are you coming? And I was still sitting on the fence and going, I don't think I want to go. And at that stage, I'd just been doing more and more, helping with Jimmy and doing some junior groups and that kind of thing. Eventually, I just said, you know what, it's not for me. I'm just going to go straight into coaching. And I was 19 at that stage. That was the end of it. It was that is it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, great. And I guess to bring it to now, I guess, how are things still on that front, and like how do you see coaching? Like you're obviously planning to stay with it and keep going, and that's great. So how's that for you at the moment?
I love my job. And I think if you can't stand out in the rain for 4 hours and do your job and still be able to come home and say I love my job, something's wrong. But it's coaching is a vocation. It's not something that everybody is suited to. I like people. I get energy from people, so that's to me that's a bonus. And I've been very lucky with the mentors I've had. Paul Casey's an amazing coach, and anytime I have something that's kind of like bothering me with coaching wise, or if I need some advice and stuff, I go to him. I think it's great if coaches can share information. I think there's an awful lot of kind of, this is my pupil and you're not to touch them, coaching, you're not to coach them, you're not to. I don't buy into that. I think the more that we can communicate as coaches, the better. I love the schools program. I absolutely adore the schools program. We're in a program in about maybe six or seven schools in Cork. It's the one I really, really love. I really love watching the kids come from, possibly 4, 5, 6 years of age up through the school into a club, work with them in a club if I'm lucky enough to do that, possibly move them on to, higher level coaching, moving into, senior tennis. I have, 20-year-olds, I'm showing my age now, 20-year-olds who are coming back to me saying, oh my God, I remember when you coached me in school. I'm going, oh my, that's a lot to be said for that. If somebody can say that, I'm still playing tennis and I remember you coaching me and you're a reason why I'm still playing, that's a job done. Tick the box. That's that's something. But the schools program's fab, and it works really well to, we've got some amazing probably not nationally ranked, but maybe provincially ranked players who've come up through a school and maybe wouldn't have taken to tennis at all had they not sort of had a go at it in a school's program. And the mini tennis red ball stuff and done in small spurts is just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But again, you have to be very tailored to schools coaching, because it's not for everybody. Having a horde of like 30 kids, all with different personalities, running mayhem around a schoolyard, is not to everyone's cup of tea. I have great fun with that. I love it. I wish I could do more of it. I unfortunately I don't have too much time at the moment. I'm hoping to do more in the schools next year, but I have some really reliable, brilliant coaches that work in the schools program, and they're just gifted in being able to get the kids to develop and keep the numbers building, which is what you want. You want, lots and lots of kids playing tennis at a young age, because then as they get older and they start to drop off, you're still able to maintain, a high number of kids attending your sessions and attending clubs, and that's what we want. And the more they play, the better it is.
Absolutely. No, I guess it's an interesting one on the schools, because obviously it is quite a different experience to club coaching, I'm sure. And I guess the fact, there are a whole bunch of kids, and like you really get to see them the whole way through. And I guess it's as you say, like it's different people might be suited to the club more or the school more. So I guess just the question I have there is, well, what is the best thing about the schools, do you think, compared to the club? What do you like in particular about the schools?
I think with the schools tennis, it's, you don't have to be good. Like when you go to a club, always the kids who are like, picked for the team games and that are always the good players, and in the schools program, it's such a friendship based, there's such a friendship based element to it, that the kids are, improving together. They're attending because their friends are attending. They're not attending as a oh, my mum's friend plays tennis, and so I want you to go and play in a tennis club. And they're not playing like that. They're playing because their friends are there, and then they tend to move. They're a little bit like herds. If one kid goes to a school's tennis program and 4 of her friends go with her, when one of those kids moves to a club, all 4 move to the club. And so you have this lovely, continuation of, like, a little bit like a conveyor belt of keeping kids involved in sport, which essentially is what we want. And they're doing it with their friends. And I think by all the workshops and all the questionnaires and everything that's been done for the last year, that we've spent doing so much stuff online, everything that's been done to find out why teenagers give up sport, why kids leave a sport, it pretty much comes down, you see it in big bold letters, is friends, and then there's the coaches. So that's what I'm saying, is that, like, not every coach is suited to schools tennis, because it's very snappy. You don't get you don't get to see sometimes the finished product, because Mary starts with you when she's 5. Are you guaranteed to have Mary till she's 13, 14 and really starting to excel? Maybe no, maybe not. But I think the skills programs is just, it's so essential that we have as many of them as possible, and that then there's a good link with the club, and then you have a lovely follow on. And it's even better if it's a local school, like in Cork here, the schools that I work in, they're all based in and around the kind of Ballinlough, Douglas, St. Michael's area, and a coach in Ballinlough, a coach in St. Michael's, of good mates who coach in Douglas. So I'm quite happy to send the kids. I'm not going, oh, they have to come and coach with me. It's just get them to move from a schools program into a club program, and then there's progression, and that naturally stays then. Kids stay because it's fun. They stay because they've got their friends, and then they stay essentially at the end of it if they like the coach,
Yeah. No, I think that is a big thing. Kind of the link then from school to club is obviously a huge thing. For sure, I guess a big part of the skill set. Just a couple of final questions, JoAnne. Firstly, if you could go back and give your maybe your teenage self some advice, what advice do you think you would tell yourself?
Okay, so I kind of like the pathway that I took, to be honest with you, because I only discovered that I was really competitive when I got to senior tennis. I wish actually probably that if I could take the passion that I now know that I have for the sport, and I could take the the aggression that I have on the court to win, but that's done through the just wanting to win so badly for me and for my partner or for my team. If I could take that and transfer it to when I was growing up, I don't think I understood the team element of things, and it's unfortunate because I believe I was quite a good player. I only believe that now. I didn't believe it when I was younger, but I think if I could give the piece of advice of that, if you believe in yourself, not necessarily, I don't mean this in a funny way, but like, do it your own way, because I don't play the same as everybody else. I have a good backhand, but that's pretty much it. My forehand is not great, and it's technically not what you would call sound if you put me on a split screen with a beautiful player like Sinead Lowen. There is nothing in my forehand that looks like hers, but technically is only one side of the game. If you can achieve something without having to make technical changes, then that's a huge bonus. So I think believing in myself, and then also just having that killer instinct. That's the words I was looking for. I wish I had more of that. I have it now in abundance. People will tell you that.
Yeah. And finally, what is your favorite thing about tennis?
Watching other people still play. That's, like I've said to you over the last while, is being able to say, I have a girl who's coming to coaching at the moment, Adam, she's lovely. She couldn't hit a ball, and she came to us. She's very, very quiet. Her mum said, her family are split up. She's not outgoing, doesn't talk, and she came to tennis quite heavy. Physically, she suffers from asthma, and she needs to play sport for loads of different reasons, and every sport that she played she just hated, and she came to us, was kind of like last stop shop, and she's still playing. This is 8-9 years later. She's a different kid. She has friends through it. She actually wants to go to a school closer to a tennis club, even if it means going to boarding school. That to me that's enough. That's my job done. Being able to say that kid has it's brought her such joy, such love, and she's still doing it. And I think that's something that she'll have for years.
Yeah.
If that answers your question, I don't know.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great story, and it's stories like that and other stories like it that are just great. And I think tennis does have those kind of stories, and I think that is something that makes it such a great sport in so many ways. And JoAnne, obviously a big thanks again for talking. I think I've really enjoyed getting some of the stories and some of the different bits and pieces. A big thanks for that. And all the best with hopefully a good summer and good weather maybe that you'll have over the summer, and we'll see what comes. But yeah, all the best, and yeah, thanks very much.
Big thanks once again to JoAnne for her time and for sharing her great tennis stories. I really enjoyed that chat. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. If you did, please consider subscribing, leaving a comment, and sharing the podcast with other people that you think might enjoy it. Thanks for that in advance. I've been Adam, and until next time, goodbye.